The relationship between China and Tibet has been a long and complex one, with many questions surrounding their tumultuous history. With much of the region's history shrouded in mystery, it begs the question, what has caused the ongoing feud between China and Tibet? In today's video, we'll explore the deep-rooted tensions between the two countries and the events that led to their current state of affairs. Hello, and welcome to Prime Time TV. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell to receive more amazing content. Now, let's get started with the video. The China-Tibet dispute is now in its 8th decade, and the two countries' historical relationship is at the heart of the conflict. While Tibetans claim that their society was independent and that they were never a part of China, the Chinese claim that Tibet has always been a part of China. In 1951, representatives from China and Tibet signed the 17-point agreement. In it, China promised to keep Tibet's traditional government and religion in place, according to a Reuters backgrounder. And this happened after China invaded Tibet in 1949-50, beat its army, and took control of large parts of Tibetan territory. The controversy over the 17-point agreement. The Tibetans accused Beijing of breaking the agreement, which they did not agree to in the first place. Dissatisfaction with these violations resulted in the 1959 Tibetan Rebellion, which was crushed by the Chinese, forcing the Tibetan leader, the 14th Dalai Lama, and a large number of followers to flee to India. The agreement's full title was the Agreement on Measures for Tibet's Peaceful Liberation. It was signed after the Chinese invaded and occupied Tibet's eastern and northern parts, threatening further advance. They were naturally negotiating from a position of strength. Though the Chinese claimed that the agreement was mutual and cordial, and the Tibetans signed it at the time, the Tibetan government in exile later stated that it was signed under duress. While India did not explicitly support the Tibetan claim, a statement from New Delhi stated that Tibetans are bound to be under duress during negotiations due to China's invasion and control of eastern and northern parts of Tibet. How did the Chinese violate the pact? Despite their assurances, the Chinese undermined the Tibetan administration, introduced communist Chinese policies, and increased troops in the region, according to the Tibetans. The communist land reforms left the region in turmoil. This led to rising discontent among Tibetans against the Chinese state, culminating in the failed 1959 uprising that forced the Tibetan leader, the 14th Dalai Lama, to flee to India. According to the Central Tibetan Administration, which serves as the Tibetan government in exile from Dharamshala, Himachal Pradesh, the Chinese violated numerous provisions of the agreement. The Dalai Lama accepted the pact in order to safeguard the people and country from total destruction. The CTA stated that it tried to follow it until 1959, when people rose up against the Chinese. In Kham and Amdo, regions of Tibet, communist reforms were put in place against the wishes of the Tibetan people. The Tibetan way of life was changed against their will, and hundreds of Tibetan religious and cultural institutions were destroyed, says CTA in a 2011 paper published in the Tibet Journal. What is the basis of the Tibet-China conflict? Simply put, the conflict is about the nature of the relationship between Tibet and China. The Tibetan government in exile says that their home country has never been a part of China, but Beijing says Tibet has always been an important part of China. Scholars say that the relationship between Tibet and China is a complicated one. There is evidence for Tibet's independence, but no other country has recognized Tibet as an independent country, and Lhasa's relationship with Beijing has sometimes been seen as that of an overlordship. While the Tibetans initially demanded independence, their government in exile and the Dalai Lama have softened their stance to a middle-way framework, which would be an agreement with Beijing for peaceful coexistence without out-and-out independence. India's place in the China-Tibet conflict. First, the biggest problem for the Chinese is that the Dalai Lama, who they see as a separatist leader, and the Tibetan government in exile are based in India. Second, India's position is complicated by the fact that China's territorial claims in India's Ladakh and northeast are based on claims made by Lhasa before China occupied Tibet. India has formally agreed to the One China policy, which means it agrees that Tibet belongs to China. But New Delhi has often used the Tibet card, and India's position has hardened in recent years, especially after China broke all border agreements on its own in eastern Ladakh since 2020. Previously, Indian officials and ministers were instructed to keep their engagement with Tibetans in exile under wraps. But that has changed since 2020. The feud between China and Tibet has been going on for decades and has had a huge impact on both countries. Even though there has been much progress in recent years, the conflict still shows no signs of slowing down. As we continue to learn more about the history and evolution of this conflict, we can hope that both sides will eventually find a way to peacefully resolve their differences and work towards a brighter future. What are your thoughts on the matter? Let us know in the comments. Also, if you liked the video, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more. Thanks a lot for tuning in. See ya later.